in the US and in Hong Kong, and we offer a full range of services to help you with Bitrix24, starting off with pre-sale support, so we can discuss your requirements in detail and really evaluate if Bitrix24 would be a good fit for your business. If it is, we can then implement the system for you and build any customizations or integrations that you require. If you're using the self-hosted edition, we can provide hosting services, and we then provide ongoing dedicated support and bespoke training to really help you get the most out of Bitrix24. Okay, so if you're new to Bitrix24, you've come to the webinar today to get more information. It's important to actually understand what Bitrix24 is. So it is a collaboration suite of well in excess now of 40 different tools that you can use to help you in managing your business. And specifically today, we're going to be focusing on the HR tools and modules that you can use within the system. There are over 9 million customers around the world now that use Bitrix24, and that is growing every day. And the system is available in 2 different editions. So we have the Bitrix24 Cloud and we have the Bitrix24 Self-Hosted, or also called the On-Premise edition. And prices start from $49 per month for a cloud-based system. And for a self-hosted edition, starting off with the Business 50 pack, that is available for $2,990. Okay, so why should you use Bitrix24 for your HR requirements? So it's important to go through this in the HR Toolkit webinar so you can start to evaluate the different tools. So within Bitrix24, there are lots of different tools that you can then use for finding employees and employee information. You can manage users' work time and personal areas for contracts and appraisal documents, for example. You can build out your very own self-service forms for managing a variety of types of requests, such as absence requests, expenses, purchase requests. And you can also build your own custom processes. And this is one of the real valuable areas within the workflow tools, is you can build your very own custom processes to manage your HR requirements. So for example, you may build an onboarding new starter workflow. Those can be built within your system as well. So we'll have a look at those different tools in the webinar today. Okay, so first of all, we're going to focus on some of the major areas of Bitrix24 for HR. So first of all, we're going to have a look at the profile and company structure. We'll then move on to look at the time management tools where we can manage users' time. And then we'll see how we can manage documents within personal drive areas and see how we can engage with our employees through this system. And that's really important with staff remote working. And then we'll look at self-service forms and the customized processes that you can build into Bitrix24. Okay, so let's log into our Bitrix24 system. So first of all, today we're going to have a look at the profile and company structure. So first of all, each user in the system has their own profile. So here we are logged in as Max Smith, so I can go into my profile, and that opens up my profile page. So first of all, you can have an image for yourself, and so every colleague in the system can have a picture displayed on their profile. And then we can see more information within our profile page. So I've got some details and information. I can also create my own custom fields if I want to capture maybe some additional details. So for example, here we've got a skills field. So we can select what skills we have, maybe the key skills that we have, and we want to save that to our profile. And you can see across the top, we also have some additional shortcuts. So for example, we may want to open the tasks that we are currently working on. So I can open up the task area. Or maybe I want to go into my drive area where we have information and documents stored. So the profile page is very useful because you can store information and it can link to other areas of your Bitrix system. We also then have the employee and company structure area. So we've just looked at an individual there on their profile page. But what you can also do is you can build out your company structure. So here we can add all of the departments that are really associated to the company. Now this is not just useful because within Bitrix we can then use this structure for leave approval processes and different workflows that you implement. But it could also be useful for new starters who just want to be able to see the structure of the organisation. So it's very nice to actually see this overview. And within here we can then add each user to their relevant departments, or it can also be multiple departments that you add them to. And we also then have the employee directory database. So inside here we can then see all of our employees, and as an administrator I can customize the layout of this, and I can decide what pieces of information I want to show. So maybe actually I don't want to show skills right now because we're waiting for some people to input their skills, so I can remove that from the interface here. You also have a search tool, so you can search through different fields or departments, or it's a free text search as well. So I might want to find a specific employee who I want to communicate with. So I can click on Mark's profile, and from there I can then communicate with them. So there's 3 different ways you can communicate with your colleagues in Bitrix24. So starting off, you can communicate through instant chat. So there we can send a message, and we can see now if I go into Mark's profile, Mark has received that message. And we can then have that conversation. You can also communicate through voice calling and also HD video calls. So you can have up to 48 users on one video call at a single time. So there are a variety of ways that you can communicate with your staff through Bitrix24. We also have an additional module here for absence management, but we'll discuss this in some more detail later on when we look at the leave approval process. Okay, so moving on to look at some of the time management and reporting features. So if you have a professional cloud license or any self-hosted edition, you have access to the clock in and clock out tool. So within here you can set time parameters for your staff where they have to be clocked in and then also clocked out at specific times of the working day. And that time can then be recorded in your Bitrix24 system. So for example here, I might want to take a break, so I can start recording my break time in the system. And then maybe I want to clock back in and it will start logging my working time. You also may want to add a report or a summary about what you've completed for that day, and that can then go to your management to view in the system. So if we go to our time and reporting section, and if we go to the work time, you can then see all of that time that has been logged. So if we're logged in here as Max, so I can see Max's time in here, and you'll be able to see every user who has logged their time in the system. And I can click on that working day, and it gives me a breakdown of that time. So I can see when Max has clocked in, how long they've been on break, and when they've clocked out. And Max has also added some more information in their report, so we've got some more information about that working day. Now within here we can also add comments if we maybe want to query something just to double check, so we could send a comment to Max about that. So all of that information is then displayed inside here. Another feature that is available on all the cloud systems is within tasks, you have the ability to record your working time on tasks within the system. So if we go into the task module, there are lots of different ways you can view tasks, and we do have a webinar where we focus specifically on projects and tasks, so we won't go into too much detail in today's webinar. But you're able to see all of the tasks across the system, so we can view all of this information. And within each task, you can then record the amount of time that is spent on that task. So within this task, customization of intranet portal, we have the start time tracker button. So I can click on there, and you can see now it's starting to track the amount of time that has been spent on this particular task. So I can pause that, I can mark it as finished once it's completed. And you can see a full history of all of the time that's elapsed on that specific task. and you also see the full history of all of that time inside the system. Okay, so let's look at some of the time management tools. One thing just to mention as well, if we just go back into time and reports, you can set schedules, and if you want to set kind of violations within the system, that can be done. So if we go into a schedule, for example, what you can do is, if we go into the schedule creation area, you may say, for example, that your employees have to be clocked in between 9 AM and 6 PM, and maybe they can have 1 hour as break. So that sets the time parameters for when they are needing to be clocked in and clocked out. And we can then also track violations if you want to. So we may say, for example, that a user can clock in at a specific time. So let's say they're allowed to clock in up to 10 minutes either way of that 9 AM start time. And if they're not clocked in, say between 8:50 or 9:10, you can then set a notification, maybe goes to the HR manager, so they can start to understand where that person is, why they haven't come to work, make sure they're okay. So that's a look at the time management reporting tools. Moving on, let's have a look at some of the drive area features that we have for Bitrix24. So within Bitrix, you have areas to store documents and information inside the drive area. So within here, you have your own personal drive space. So what we can do is we can import local files and folders, or we can connect with external applications as well. So I can then see all of those folders and information inside here. And what you can do on any of your documents that you store, you can then also set access rights. So you may say, for example, this is a performance review document. You might want to share it with maybe your manager and maybe a department head, who can then access that particular document. And you can then set what level of access they have on those particular documents. So anything you store in your drive area, you're in full control as to who is able to access that piece of information. And then we also have a company drive space. So this is basically your company repository. So you can store all of your pieces of information inside here. So we've broken this down into different departments, and we can then grant access for particular departments to access particular folders inside the system. And we can then add all of our documents or link to external applications. And you're able to filter through all of these documents as well. So you might want to filter maybe based on document content, maybe based on what folder it's in, or you also have a free text search area as well to drill down to find particular documents based on the titles. Now, quite a nice feature as well on documents is you can create business processes. So you can turn on this business process feature. So for example, when a document comes in, you might want to set up an approval process. So for example, we may say when the document comes in, it goes to two specific management people to approve before other people could access it. So any documents you store in the drive area, you can then set business processes on those documents. Okay, so that's a look at the drive area. You also get your own calendar space. So within the system, you have your own personal calendar here where all of your events, maybe some calls that are coming in from the CRM system for your activity that are planned out for the week, those are all added into here. And you also have a company calendar. So for your company-wide events, those are then added into your company calendar. And if we just go back into your personal calendar space, we can synchronize with external calendars as well. Okay, so moving from the drive and the calendar space, we want to just focus now on employee engagement. So this is really critical for the use of Bitrix24 HR tools. It's important you're able to engage with your staff, especially with maybe some staff working remotely, or if you have different offices in different areas of the world. It's important you're able to engage with your staff. Now, one way this can be done is through the feed section, because the feed section is basically your very own personal newsfeed board of any piece of information or a post that you are associated with. So on here, for example, I might want to maybe add a comment. So if I go into here, I can send a message. So inside here, I can just type out a message. Maybe I want to attach a document or a piece of information. So I can then attach that into here, and I can then select who I want to send this to. So maybe I want to send this to a specific person, or maybe I want to send it to a department or all staff. So you can then decide who is the audience for that particular post that you are about to submit, and that would then be sent to them. They can receive a notification, and that would also then be added to their personal feed section. And on any post that you create, you can add your own likes and comments. So I can add comments back to this. So it allows for collaboration, and you can see who has viewed any posts in the system. You can also pin posts and favorite them, and those are then available in your filtering section. So I might want to look at all of the posts that I have favorited, for example. So I can then quickly view those pieces of information. So you might want to favorite maybe critical posts that are really important. We can also send out announcements. So there are different types of posts that you can send. So maybe an announcement is really useful because it can make you force the reader to mark that they have read that message. So if there's a critical situation, you can send out an announcement. Okay, so I've made this announcement here. I'm going to send this to all the employees. So we're going to send this out. Okay, so let's just go into one of our other users in the system, and now you can see that announcement has been added. So it comes up there. It can also have this button to mark it as read. So any critical piece of information, you can mark those in the system. So that's a really useful tool. And you can also send out a different type of post, which is an an appreciation. So if someone's done a really good job, you can actually send them a message to kind of thank them and award them. And with this, you can then also send out a badge that they then have stored in their profile. Okay, so I can add this message, and I'm going to choose the employee that this award is for. So let's say I want to send this to a particular person, but I also want the message to go to other people as well. So maybe I want to send this to all employees so they're aware of Mary's great work. So I can then send this out, and Mary will then receive that badge. And if we go into our profile page, you can then view that badge in the system. So in Max's profile, Max can then see all of the appreciations that they have in the system, and we can see what information we have with that badge. So we've got a sales award here, and we can see that badge. So that's really useful just to engage with your staff, make sure they're aware when they're doing a good job, and that's really useful, as I say, for remote working, just to make sure people are feeling part of the business and organisation. Another feature we have is the company pulse. And the company pulse gives you an overview of which areas of the Bitrix24 system users are using the most. So you can search by either individuals or by the company. And this just gives you then that level of information to be able to see really what areas are being utilised, but also what's being underutilised as well within the business. So you can choose by date ranges. So we can see the drive area is not being used very much. So let's actually send a post out to everyone, making them aware of this and making them have some information about the drive, so it may make it more accessible to our staff. So let's send this out to all of our employees so they can then see what the drive has and what features it has, and hopefully now that will start getting used more within the Bitrix24 system, and we can then promote it. Okay, so that's a look at some of the employee engagement tools. And then following on from there, we're going to be having a look at the self-service forms. So we're going to have a look at these in more detail within a short while, but just to point out where these are inside the system. We can access these from the feed area that we've just been looking at. So if we go back into the MAR section, then what we have here is, if we just click on the MAR, we have a workflow area here. And if we click on the workflow, it will then open up the selection of workflows that we have accessible from the feed section. So for example, if I wanted to submit for some annual leave, I can click on the leave approval and it will open me up the leave approval form. But in the next section of the HR Toolkit webinar, we'll be going through a leave approval in full detail. So we'll have a look at that in a second. Okay, first of all, I just want to see if there are any questions. Please do add them into the question box within YouTube and we can run through those for you today. Okay, so we've had a question come in. Can an employee be in more than one department at the same time? Yeah, absolutely. So if we just go back to that company structure, then what we can do within the employee company area, then you're able to add an employee to multiple areas of your system. So you're not restricted to only having them accessible to one department. So for example, here we can see Mike is part of the IT team, and Mike is also part of the sales team as well. So you can have people across multiple areas of your business. Okay, so can a user clock in on the mobile app? Yes, absolutely. So you just need to make sure that is enabled. So it can be turned on or it can be turned off. So if we just go back into our work schedule settings, then what we can do when we have set the schedule, you can then see down here we have the restrictions area. So you can decide if they're able to clock in via the browser, and also we can turn on the mobile app as well. So if we save that, users will be able to clock in using the mobile app as well. So that's really, it just gives you that control really there. So if you want your staff to be able to clock in using the app, then it doesn't mean they're in the office. Maybe if they're working in the field remotely, you want them to be able to clock in on the app, then that's a great tool that you have access to. Okay, so please add any other questions into the chat box on YouTube and we'll run through those before the end of today's HR Toolkit webinar. Okay, so now moving on from looking at a selection of the different areas of HR tools, we're going to have a focus now on some of the self-service forms and workflow automations that you can run in Bitrix24. Because this is a really powerful area of Bitrix. It really allows you to customize the system to really cater to your processes. So you may have very specific processes that you run in your business. Using the Business Process Designer tool allows you to bring that process into Bitrix24. And specifically, we're going to be looking at 3 different types. So we're going to look at absence requests, we're going to look at business expenses, and that's using a slightly different tool. So you'll see the differences between the Business Process Designer and the robotic process automation, and then we'll have a look at creating a project as well. Okay, so let's go back into our Bitrix system. So what we're going to first of all do is request some annual leave. So within Bitrix, you have the ability to request annual leave or vacation within the system. And we can access this area going to our workflow tool. And this then opens up what workflows we have available. Now, as the administrator, you can decide what workflows are accessible from the feed area. And let's say, for example, we want to create a leave approval. That then opens up your leave approval form. Now, this is fully customizable. So within our form, we have a start date, the end date, and the absence type as mandatory fields. So let's first of all fill this in. So I'm going to select the dates. I'm going to choose my absence type. And I will add a reason. But that form there that we have just filled in, you can completely customize that. So there may be critical other pieces of information that you want to display. You can completely customize that form. So I'm going to submit this request, and that's now going to go to my manager to either approve or to reject inside the system. So I can see now that is awaiting approval. Okay, and now let's log in as our manager. So I can now see that request has come through, and now I can start working on this request. So following here, what I can do is I can see all the information about the request, and then I can go into here. If I wanted to decline it, I could add some information and a note, but actually I'm going to approve this for them. Okay, so we can see now that's been approved and I've been notified, so that's really good news. And I can go to my time and reports area, and we can see now we have what we call the absence chart. So this will show you across your business all of those absences that have been added into the system. So we've got lots of annual leave in here. We can see that one that we've just have authorized from our manager, but you can also add sick leave and so on. There's different types of leave that you could add to this particular absence chart, and you can then also filter through departments as well. Now what we have done here at Interface for the self-hosted edition, we have actually kind of developed that process even further. So what we have also done is with a plugin that we have developed that we can install onto any self-hosted edition of Bitrix24 is we've added an entitlement element to that process. So with this you can then add a leave entitlement for every employee in the system for that holiday year, and then we can then go into here and see what's currently booked up, how many pending days they have waiting for approval, and then what their remaining leave entitlement is in the system. So I can see here Max has 11 days of his entitlement left, and this entitlement if you want to accrue that and move it over to your next holiday year, that is also possible if you wanted to as the administrator. So it just takes that leave approval to a next level, and that is something we have developed here at Interface. So if you are interested in installing this tool onto your self-hosted edition, please do contact sales@interface.com, and we'll put the details up at the end of today's webinar. Okay, so that's a look at the leave approval, and I just want to show you the back end of that leave approval process. So we've just gone into now the leave approval business process designer. So this actually shows you that process, but this is in the back end where the actual process has been designed. So this is using the process designer tool. And on the right hand side you can see all of the different action blocks that you can add into your workflows. So it uses drag and drop technology. So say I want to add a new condition, I could add that condition and then fill in the details. But as standard, this process here, we requested the leave. It then went to our supervisor, which we saw, who either approved or rejected that request. They approved that request that we submitted. So that then means it goes down this left-hand channel. So we're notified that the holiday was approved, which we saw, and then it got added to the absence chart. But if that process there, if the manager rejected that particular holiday, it would then go down this right-hand chain. So we would just be notified that the request for leave has been denied. So it then goes down a completely different channel. And we can use this process designer tool to really construct a variety of different types of processes. So if you have a particular process you want to implement, we can look to use this process designer tool to build out that process. Now we can train you on using the process designer tool, or we could also implement a specific workflow. If you send over the details, we can then see what work would be needed to construct that for you. Okay, so that's a look there at the business process designer tool. But I also want to show you a more modern twist on that, really. So we also have what we call the robotic process automation tool. And what this tool does is it basically allows you to build out your very own workflows, but in a completely different style to that process designer tool. So what Bitrix24 received a lot of feedback on is that the process designer tool for some people can be quite complex. So they have taken a lot of the processes out of the CRM system, which is heavily utilised, and created a workflow designer tool. So here we have an expenses workflow. So what we've done is we've created the stages that we want for our expenses workflow. So you can create as many stages as you like into your workflow as you like in the system. And then we can use automation rules to basically streamline that workflow. So for example, as soon as we have received information about this expense, it's then going to automatically go to the supervisor to approve. And once they've approved it or rejected it, we're then going to automatically move it to the expense authorized or the expense declined process. So we can use automation rules to streamline that process and workflow, but it's in a completely different designer style to the business process designer tool. And some people may say it is easier. So what we can do first of all is we can, if we want to submit an expense, we can open up the form. And again, the form you see here, that's completely customizable. So again, if you want to change what information is displayed here, that can be configured. So let's just say we're going to have an expense for some lunch. Okay, and let's add the value. And the expense is going to be for tomorrow. And I'm going to save that in the system. You can see it's automatically now being routed to my supervisor for approval. So if we go into our supervisor, we can see this is our supervisor in the system, and they've now received this as a notification. So if we go to our robotic process area, I can see the expenses that I now need to authorize or reject. So I can see that's been added into the system for me to work on, and I can see all of my assignments in this assignment tab. So I'm going to start this expense area. So that information that we submitted, it's been added into the form, and I'm going to approve that expense. Okay, and now I've been notified the expense has been approved. So actually now if we go to look at all of the successful expenses, that expense has been added into here. And you can then see the entire log of this as well. So you can see when the supervisor received this and when they updated this. You can also add comments and information if you maybe want to add the receipt into here. All of that can then be stored in this one page. So it's really useful for streamlining your workflows. And you can then also decide which is the most appropriate tool. Is it the business process designer or is it the robotic process automation tool? And we can help you with that evaluation. Okay, now one last area we're going to look at today is actually maybe creating a project. So within Bitrix24, another type of workflow you may want to run is maybe the creation of projects. If you want to bring your HR team together to work on a new HR project, then what you could also do within Bitrix is bring those groups of people together automatically and also have tasks created automatically to help streamline your processes. So for example, if we go into here, I've got a new project workflow. So first of all, we've got a form that we need to fill in. So we can start working through this form. Okay, so we've got a title there, and we're going to select the manager for this project. Maybe you also want a designer who's going to be helping with designing the training scheme, because that's what this project is about. And then we're going to also set a deadline for when this project needs to be completed by. Okay, and then we've also got some additional information. So maybe you have different types of HR projects. So what we could do is, based on what we select here, this then creates specific tasks based on that project that we chose. So project A, it will bring specific people and create specific tasks, whereas project B could be different people and different tasks based on that criteria. So let's select that information. And now I'm going to go to our workflow section because I was made the manager for this particular project. So I can go into here. I'm going to add when I think this task is going to be, project will be completed by. and I'm going to approve this project. And with that workflow, it's now automatically created that project group in the system. So I can go into here, we can see the HR training project has been created, and we can see it's brought specific people into this project, and it's also created a set of tasks that need to be completed inside the system. So if you have maybe quite complex HR projects, you could create a workflow which automatically creates those tasks in the system to help you start engaging on that project automatically and save you time and resources. So this is a real general overview of the different types of workflows that you could implement within your Bitrix24 system. Okay, let's just see if there are any further questions today. Okay, so can absence requests go to multiple users? So yes, absolutely. So if we just go back into that workflow designer tool. So first of all, within here, we've got the approval process, so we're going to select the supervisor. But if you wanted to, we could add additional supervisors into this layer. So if you wanted it to then go to another person to approve after the initial supervisor, we could add that additional layer of approval. You could add as many layers of approval into there as you require. Okay, another question, can we add our corporate branding into the Bitrix system? So yes, you can. So if you're referring to the login page for the system, if you want to corporate brand this, then it is possible with the self-hosted edition. So we can brand up the system for you in the login page that has your corporate branding and identity. And we can also then add your own custom URL. So here, for example, we have demo.interface.com. We can add your own personalized URL onto here as well. So it has your own corporate identity. Okay, so in summary today, in today's HR Toolkit, we've looked at how you can build out your profile and company structure, and we can then store information about our employees. We've seen how we can use time management tools to track our employees and make sure they're working to the correct time periods, and we can then log time on tasks. We've seen how we can have our own personal drive areas, so you can store documents and critical pieces of information, but then you can also be in control as to who is able to access that information within your drive area. We've had a look as well at the employee engagement, so how you can create different types of posts. We've looked at the different types of communication channels through video calls, instant chat, and also how you can send appreciations to your colleagues. And we then looked at the different types of permission structures that we can validate on those posts, so we can decide who is going to be having access to those comments, and also within the drive area we can set permissions on those documents. And then we've just had a look at several real life examples of self-service forms. So I think it's a real key area to take out of today's HR Toolkit webinar. You can customize and implement your very own processes directly into the HR areas of Bitrix24 to help you in managing your business. Okay, so coming soon, here are a selection of the up and coming webinars. We're here every Tuesday at 11 AM Eastern Time. Please do register here at interface.com/webinars. And if you have any questions before next week's webinar, please do contact us at sales@interface.com, and we'll be happy to set up a meeting with you to discuss your requirements in more detail. Thank you for your time today. Hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Hopefully see you